The crystal champagne flute hit the Italian marble floor with a sound like breaking dreams. I watched the pale golden liquid spread across the pristine white surface, expensive bubbles dissolving into nothing as my future daughter-in-law, Madison Pierce, stood above me with that ice-cold smile playing at the corners of her perfectly painted lips. "Clean it up, Gloria," she said, her voice dripping with contempt as thick as honey. "It's literally the only thing you're good at." I didn't say a word. At 58 years old, I'd learned that silence could be more powerful than any comeback. My knees cracked as I lowered myself to the floor. Arthritis was a souvenir from 3 decades of scrubbing other people's messes, and I began picking up the jagged glass shards with my calloused, work-worn hands. Hands that had built an empire Madison couldn't even imagine. Behind me, I heard her stage whisper to her bridesmaids, a gaggle of designer-clad women who smelled like privilege and looked at me like I was something they'd scraped off their Louboutins. "Can you believe this is going to be my mother-in-law? An actual cleaning lady. Like, how embarrassing is that? Derek's wedding is going to look like some kind of charity event with her shuffling around." The bridesmaids erupted in barely suppressed giggles. I kept my eyes on the floor, on the shards of glass catching the light from the massive chandelier overhead. This penthouse apartment in downtown Chicago's Gold Coast neighborhood, the one Madison called our little palace, had a chandelier worth more than most people's cars. What Madison didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the deed to this building was tucked in a hidden compartment in my worn leather purse, sitting on the kitchen counter 20 feet away. And there was something else Madison didn't know. Something about the crumpled papers I'd rescued from her trash can 2 days ago, papers that were going to bring her carefully constructed world crashing down around those designer heels. But I was patient. I'd been patient for 35 years. I could wait a little longer. Chapter 2, The Woman Nobody Sees. My name is Gloria Martinez, and I am invisible. Not literally, of course. I'm 5'2", 140 pounds, with silver-streaked black hair that I keep pulled back in a practical bun. I have brown eyes that have seen too much, and hands that tell the story of every floor I've scrubbed, every toilet I've cleaned, every life I've held together with determination and willpower. But to people like Madison, to the residents of buildings like this one, to the executives whose offices I've cleaned at 3 in the morning, I might as well be a ghost. People say things around cleaning ladies. They forget we're there. They leave their laptops open, their documents on desks, their secrets scattered around like the trash we're paid to collect. They don't realize that invisible doesn't mean powerless. My story started 32 years ago in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in Pilsen, Chicago's Mexican-American neighborhood. I was 26, Derek was 3, and my husband Miguel had just walked out the door with his secretary and our savings account. I remember standing at the window, watching his taillights disappear into the night, holding my sobbing son, and making a promise. Derek would never know poverty. Derek would have every opportunity. Derek would go to college, would become something, would never have to struggle the way I was about to struggle. I started the next morning with a mop and bucket, cleaning houses in Lincoln Park for wealthy families who barely looked at me. $10 an hour, cash under the table. By the end of that first week, my hands were raw and bleeding, my back screamed with pain, and I'd made $350, more than Miguel had brought home in 2 weeks. I saw opportunity in those houses. Not just money, but information. Mrs. Patterson in her brownstone on Webster Avenue talked on the phone about her stocks while I dusted her bookshelves. Mr. Chen in his Lincoln Park condo left financial magazines scattered across his coffee table. The Goldstein family had business plans left out on their dining room table. I learned to read upside down while I polished silver. At night, after Derek fell asleep, I studied. The public library became my university. I devoured books on business, real estate, finance. I learned about LLCs and tax structures and commercial contracts. The invisible cleaning lady was getting an education that would put most MBA students to shame. Within 5 years, I'd saved enough to hire 2 other women, immigrants like me, desperate for work, willing to be invisible. Within 10 years, I had 20 employees and contracts with 3 office buildings. Within 15 years, Martinez Cleaning Services had 200 employees and contracts with half the commercial buildings in downtown Chicago. But I never told Derek. I let him think I was just a cleaning supervisor, someone who managed other cleaning ladies. I drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic while my Mercedes sat in a storage garage across town. I wore thrift store clothes while tailored suits hung in a closet Derek never saw. I lived in our modest apartment in Pilsen while I invested in real estate across the city. I wanted Derek to understand the value of hard work, of education, of treating everyone with respect regardless of their job title. I wanted him to be humble, to be kind, to be everything his father wasn't. Looking back now, as I knelt on Madison's floor picking up glass, I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. Chapter 3, The Golden Boy. Derek Martinez had exceeded every dream I'd ever dared to dream. He'd graduated top of his class from Lane Tech High School, one of Chicago's best public schools. He'd gotten a full ride to the University of Illinois, where he'd studied architecture. He'd done summer internships at prestigious firms, had won design competitions, had made me so proud I sometimes cried myself to sleep with joy. At 30, he was a junior partner at Hartman & Associates, one of Chicago's most respected architectural firms. He designed beautiful spaces, museums, libraries, affordable housing projects that won awards. He was talented, successful, handsome, charming. He was also, I was beginning to realize, weak. I first met Madison Pierce 6 months ago, when Derek brought her to Sunday dinner at our apartment, the same small place in Pilsen where I'd raised him. I'd made his favorite meal, chicken mole, rice and beans, homemade tortillas. The apartment smelled like comfort and home. Madison walked in wearing heels that cost more than our monthly rent, her nose already wrinkled in distaste. She was beautiful in that sharp, polished way of women who've never missed a meal or worried about a bill. Blonde hair in a sleek ponytail, designer everything, a smile that never quite reached her ice blue eyes. "Oh," she said, looking around the apartment with barely disguised horror. "This is quaint." Derek laughed nervously. "Mom likes to keep things simple. Don't you, Ma?" "I like to be comfortable," I said, setting the table. Sit. You must be hungry." Madison perched on the edge of her chair like she was afraid the furniture might contaminate her. She pushed the food around her plate, took tiny bites, and asked the question that should have been my first red flag. "So, Gloria," she said with that artificial sweetness that made my teeth ache, "Derek says you work in cleaning services. That must be fulfilling? I mean, we all have to start somewhere, right? Have you thought about retirement? I hope you've managed to save something so you won't be a burden on Derek and me after we're married." The silence that followed was deafening. Derek should have said something. Should have defended me. Should have told Madison that his mother's career was none of her business, that I would never be a burden, that she was out of line. Instead, he cleared his throat and said, "Mom's always been good with money. She'll be fine." "Hey, Madison, tell Mom about the wedding venue you found." And just like that, my son chose Madison over me. I smiled and nodded and listened to Madison describe the lavish wedding she was planning, at the Drake Hotel, naturally, with a guest list of 300 and a price tag that made my stomach turn. Derek kept glancing at me nervously, as if afraid I'd embarrass him by admitting I couldn't afford to contribute. If only he knew that I could buy the Drake Hotel outright and still have enough left over to retire comfortably for 3 lifetimes. But I said nothing. I cleaned up the dishes while they talked, invisible again, and I started to wonder what kind of man I'd raised. Chapter 4: The Construction Site. The call came on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks before the wedding. Gloria? Madison's voice on the phone was syrupy sweet, which meant she wanted something. I have a teeny tiny favor to ask. I was in my real office, the penthouse suite of the Martinez building on Wacker Drive, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago River. My assistant, Patricia, had just brought me coffee in the fine china I kept for important clients. I was reviewing contracts for a new hotel account worth $3 million annually. "What do you need, Madison?" I asked, already knowing I wouldn't like the answer. "Well, our cleaning company for the new condo just totally flaked on us last minute, can you believe it? And the construction crew left such a disaster, and the wedding is so soon, and Derek and I are just swamped with work. I was thinking, since you're so good at cleaning and all, maybe you could swing by and help us out? You know, just like a little wedding gift? We obviously can't pay you, I mean, it's your son's home, but it would mean so much to Derek." I closed my eyes and counted to 10 in Spanish, the way my mother had taught me when I was trying not to curse someone out. "Where's the condo?" I asked. "Oh, it's in that new building in Streeterville. The lakefront towers? The penthouse unit. It's absolutely gorgeous, Derek designed most of it himself. 3,200 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, chef's kitchen, the works. We close on it next week, but I need it spotless before we move our furniture in. The lakefront towers. My building. I owned that entire structure, all 48 floors of luxury condominiums overlooking Lake Michigan. It had been my latest acquisition, purchased through a shell company 6 months ago for $42 million. Derek had done some of the interior design work, but he had no idea his firm's client was a subsidiary of his mother's empire. And now Madison wanted me to clean the penthouse I'd already decided would be my wedding gift to them. "I'll be there Thursday morning," I said. "Fabulous. You're the best, Gloria. Derek is so lucky to have such a resourceful mother." She hung up before I could respond. Patricia looked at me with concern. She was one of the few people who knew the truth about my double life. "Mrs. Martinez, you don't have to do this. You could just tell them." "No," I said firmly. "Not yet. I need to see who my son really is. And who he's marrying." Thursday morning, I put on my oldest clothes, stained jeans, a faded Northwestern sweatshirt, scuffed sneakers. I pulled my hair back with a rubber band. I took off my jewelry, including the Cartier watch Derek didn't know I owned. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw the woman I used to be, the woman everyone assumed I still was. The invisible cleaning lady. I grabbed my bucket of supplies, industrial-strength cleaner, scrub brushes, rags, and headed to the lakefront towers in my old Honda. The doorman, Carlos, knew me as the building owner, but I'd texted him earlier to play along. He gave me a subtle nod as I entered through the service entrance. The penthouse was on the 48th floor. The elevator ride gave me time to prepare myself for whatever fresh humiliation Madison had in store. I wasn't disappointed. Chapter 5: 3 Hours of Hell. Madison opened the door in yoga pants that probably cost more than my car and a sports bra that showed off her perfectly toned abs. Her blonde hair was in a messy bun that had probably taken 20 minutes to look artfully careless. "There you are," she said, not quite managing to keep the disdain from her voice. "God, Gloria, you look like you just rolled out of a dumpster." "Well, I guess that's appropriate for the job, right?" She thrust a bucket of cheap cleaning supplies at me, the kind you buy at dollar stores, harsh chemicals in flimsy plastic bottles. "Here, use these. I don't want you wasting our good stuff." "Derek's in the shower, he had a late night at the firm. Try to finish before he comes out, okay? He gets kind of grossed out seeing people all sweaty and dirty. It upsets his stomach." Her son. His mother. And he got upset seeing me do the work I'd done to raise him. I took the bucket without a word and started in the kitchen. The construction crew had left a disaster, dust everywhere, paint splatters on the counters, muddy footprints on the pristine hardwood floors. This would take hours. Behind me, I heard Madison on the phone with one of her friends. "No, I'm not helping her." "Why would I? That's literally what she does for a living." "I know, right? Can you imagine having a maid as a mother-in-law?" Derek's so embarrassed. "We're planning to move to Seattle after the wedding, actually. Fresh start, away from his background." My hands tightened on the mop handle. Seattle. They were planning to leave Chicago, leave me, without even discussing it with Derek's only family. I kept cleaning. I scrubbed the kitchen until it gleamed, the bathroom until the fixtures sparkled. I was on my hands and knees in the master bedroom, wiping down the baseboards, when Madison appeared in the doorway. "You missed a spot," she said, pointing to a perfectly clean section of floor. "And don't forget, Derek wants the walk-in closet organized too. All the boxes need to be unpacked and shelves wiped down." Chop chop, Gloria. "We don't have all day." 3 hours in, my back was screaming, my knees felt like ground glass, and I'd reached the walk-in closet Madison had mentioned. It was enormous, bigger than my first apartment, with built-in shelving and designer shoe racks. Madison's boxes were everywhere, expensive clothes spilling out of tissue paper. And there, on the floor next to the trash can, I saw it. A crumpled piece of paper, torn in half but not quite destroyed. I'm a cleaning lady. I notice things other people miss. It's literally my job to see what others overlook. I picked up the paper, then checked the trash can. More torn pieces. Bank statements. Legal documents. I gathered them carefully, hiding them in the pocket of my cleaning apron. Madison called from the living room. "Gloria. Derek's almost done with his shower. Hurry up." "Almost finished," I called back, my heart hammering in my chest. I took the papers to the bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the toilet lid. With shaking hands, I started piecing them together like a jigsaw puzzle. What I found made my blood run cold. Chapter 6: The Truth in the Trash. The first document was a bank statement from Madison's personal account at Chase Bank. There were deposits, large deposits, coming from Hartman and Associates, Derek's firm. But they weren't payroll deposits. They were labeled vendor payments and consultant fees. Madison didn't work at Derek's firm. The second document was more damning. It was an email, printed out and torn up, from Madison to someone named Brett Carmichael. The email was dated 2 weeks ago. "Brett, I'm almost done here. The wedding is in 3 weeks, then we can finally be together. Derek's firm is worth about $400,000 if we liquidate his partnership shares. I've been bleeding the accounts slowly so he won't notice until after we're married. California is a community property state, remember? Half of everything becomes mine the second we say I do. The condo here sells for $2.1 million. My name's going on that deed too. By the time his family realizes what's happening, we'll be in Belize with about $1.5 million and new identities. Poor Derek. He's so trusting. See you soon, baby. I read it 3 times, my hands shaking so badly the paper rustled like autumn leaves. My son was being set up. This whole thing, the whirlwind romance, the expensive wedding, the new condo, it was all a con. Madison was going to marry him, steal everything he'd worked for, and disappear with her real boyfriend, leaving Derek broke and betrayed. And she thought she could do this because Derek's mother was just a cleaning lady. Someone who didn't matter, who wouldn't notice, who couldn't stop her. She'd made the fatal mistake of underestimating the invisible woman. I carefully folded the papers and tucked them deep into my apron pocket. Then I finished cleaning the closet with mechanical precision, my mind racing through possibilities. When I emerged, Derek was in the living room, fresh from his shower, hair still damp. He wore designer jeans and a polo shirt that probably cost more than I used to make in a week. "Hey, Ma," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Madison said you were helping out." That's really nice of you." He didn't hug me. Didn't ask how I was doing. Just stood there, uncomfortable, as if my presence in his beautiful new home was something embarrassing he needed to explain away. "It's no problem, Mijo," I said softly. "I'd do anything for you. You know that." "Yeah," he said, glancing toward Madison, who was watching us from the kitchen with a calculating expression. "Listen, about the wedding, Madison's parents are paying for most of it, so you don't need to worry about contributing or anything. I know money's tight for you." Money's tight. I owned the building we were standing in. I owned a company with 800 employees and annual revenue of $65 million. I had a personal net worth that would have made Derek's jaw drop. But to him, I was just poor old mom, struggling to get by. "That's very considerate, Derek," I said. Madison swooped in, linking her arm through Derek's possessively. "We just want you to be comfortable at the wedding, Gloria. Maybe we can get you a nice dress? Something simple, not too flashy. We want you to blend in with the other guests. Blend in. Be invisible. Know your place." "That would be lovely," I said, picking up my bucket of cleaning supplies. "I should go. I have another job this evening." "Of course you do," Madison said with false sympathy. "Always hustling, right? That's so admirable." Derek walked me to the door. For just a moment, his hand touched my shoulder. "Thanks, Ma. For understanding. For being cool about everything." I looked up at my son, this man I'd sacrificed everything for, and saw a stranger. Somewhere along the way, I'd raised someone who valued appearance over substance, who was embarrassed by hard work, who chose a beautiful lie over ugly truth. But he was still my son. And I'd be damned if I'd let Madison destroy him. "I love you, Derek," I said. "Love you too, Ma," he replied automatically, already turning back toward Madison. I took the elevator down to the garage, got in my Honda, and drove exactly 3 blocks before I had to pull over. I gripped the steering wheel and let myself feel the full weight of what I'd discovered. Then I dried my eyes, pulled out my phone, and called Patricia. "I need you to schedule an emergency meeting with our legal team," I said. "And I need you to pull every file we have on Hartman and Associates. Tonight. Also, contact our private investigator. I need a full background check on Madison Marie Pierce and a man named Brett Carmichael." I want to know everything, where they've been, what they've done, who they've conned before. Yes, Mrs. Martinez, Patricia said. Is everything all right? No, I said. But it's about to be. Chapter 7, The Investigation. Over the next 5 days, I learned things about Madison Pierce that made my blood boil. Our private investigator, Frank Chen, a former Chicago PD detective who'd done work for my company for years, delivered his report 72 hours after I'd hired him. We met in my real office, Patricia taking notes as Frank laid out the evidence. Madison Pierce isn't her real name, Frank began, sliding photos across my desk. She was born Madeline Pritchard in Tampa, Florida. She's done this before, twice. The photos showed a younger Madison with different hair colors, different names, but the same cold, calculating eyes. First victim was a dentist in Phoenix named Robert Chen, no relation. She married him, cleaned out his accounts, and disappeared. He filed for bankruptcy 6 months later. Second victim was a real estate developer in Denver named Timothy Walsh. Same pattern, courtship, marriage, theft, disappearance. Walsh killed himself a year after she left him. I felt sick. And Brett Carmichael? Her actual boyfriend. They've been running this scam for 6 years. He's got a record, fraud, identity theft, check kiting. They're professionals, Mrs. Martinez. Your son is just their latest mark. Patricia looked horrified. We need to call the police. Not yet, I said. Madison hasn't actually stolen anything yet. And Derek. I paused, my voice catching. Derek chose her. He chose to be embarrassed by me, to pull away from his family, to believe her lies. He needs to see who she really is. Calling the police now would just make him defensive. He'd think I was sabotaging his happiness. Frank nodded. I've seen it before. Victims often defend their abusers, especially when family tries to intervene. He needs proof he can't deny. Then we give him proof, I said. Frank, I need you to track Brett Carmichael. Where is he, what's he doing, everything. Patricia, I need you to quietly audit Derek's accounts at Hartman and Associates. Madison's been siphoning money, I want to know exactly how much, and I want to document everything. Get our forensic accountants on it. And the condo? Patricia asked. I smiled grimly. The condo closing is scheduled for next Monday, 4 days before the wedding. Madison thinks her name is going on that deed. I'm going to make sure it doesn't. Over the weekend, the pieces came together like a nightmare puzzle. Madison had stolen $127,000 from Derek's accounts at his firm, small amounts over 6 months, disguised as payments to fake vendors and consultants. She'd been careful, but not careful enough. Our forensic accountant, Michelle Rodriguez, found the paper trail in less than 24 hours. Brett Carmichael was in Chicago, staying at a cheap motel in Schaumburg under an assumed name. Frank had photos of him and Madison meeting secretly at a Starbucks in Lincoln Park, Madison handing over an envelope, probably cash from Derek's stolen money. The condo closing was scheduled for 10 a.m. Monday at the law offices of Madison's attorney, not Derek's, which should have been another red flag. Frank confirmed that Madison had already secured a buyer in Seattle willing to purchase the condo for $2.3 million as soon as the wedding was over, no questions asked about the sudden sale. It was a perfect con. Almost. Monday morning, I woke up at 5 a.m. and put on my real clothes, a tailored navy suit from Armani, pearls, Louboutin heels. I did my hair and makeup carefully. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw not the invisible cleaning lady, but Gloria Martinez, CEO and property owner. It was time for the cleaner to clean house. Chapter 8, The Family Dinner. The phone call came Monday afternoon. Madison's voice was bright, artificial. Gloria. We'd love to have you over for a little family dinner tonight. Just you, Derek, me, and my parents. You know, to celebrate the condo closing, we officially own it now. Can you come around 7? Oh, and maybe wear something nice? My parents are kind of formal. She wanted me there to parade me around like a trained pet, to show her parents the unfortunate mother-in-law they'd be saddled with. To reinforce the narrative that Derek came from nothing while she was elevating him. I'll be there, I said. What should I bring? Oh, just yourself is fine, Madison said with fake cheerfulness. Actually, you know what? We're going to have a lot of dishes. Maybe you could help with cleanup after? My parents always generate so much mess. Of course. Bring Gloria into work while everyone else enjoyed themselves. I'll bring my good bucket, I said drily. She laughed, missing the sarcasm completely. You're so funny, Gloria. See you at 7. I hung up and called Patricia. Is everything ready? All the documents are in the briefcase. The attorney is standing by. Frank has the surveillance photos printed and ready. Mrs. Martinez, are you sure about this? Derek's going to be devastated. He's going to be devastated either way, I said quietly. Better now than after he's married to a con artist. At 6:45 p.m., I pulled up to the lakefront towers in my Mercedes, not the Honda. I was wearing my Armani suit, my hair was styled perfectly, and I carried a Hermes briefcase that cost more than most people's monthly rent. The doorman's eyes widened. Good evening, Mrs. Martinez, Carlos said with respect. Good evening, Carlos. I took the elevator to the 48th floor, my heart hammering with each ascending number. This was it. The moment everything changed. Derek opened the door, and his eyes went wide with confusion. Ma? What are you? Why are you dressed like that? Hello, Mijo, I said, stepping past him into the apartment. I'm dressed for a business meeting. The living room was set up for an elegant dinner. Madison's parents were there, Richard and Barbara Pierce, or whatever their real names were, both dressed in expensive clothes and wearing expressions of practiced superiority. Madison stood by the window in a designer cocktail dress, a glass of wine in her hand. Her smile froze when she saw me. Gloria, she said slowly. You look different. I imagine I do, I said pleasantly, setting my briefcase down on the dining table with a decisive thunk. I'm not wearing my work clothes tonight. Tonight, we're going to talk business. Derek looked completely lost. Ma, what's going on? Did you borrow that suit or something? Before I could answer, Madison recovered her composure. Well, you clean up nicely, Gloria. That's a lovely, department store suit. Now, why don't you head into the kitchen? We've got some pre-dinner appetizers that need plating. I don't think so, I said. Tonight, I'm not the help. Tonight, I'm the landlord. Silence. What are you talking about? Madison asked, her voice sharp now, dropping the fake sweetness. I opened my briefcase and pulled out the first document. I'm talking about the fact that this condo, this entire building, actually, is owned by Martinez Property Holdings, LLC. Which is a subsidiary of Martinez Enterprises. Which is owned entirely by me. I laid the deed on the table. Derek stepped forward, his face pale, and picked it up. This says you own the building. Ma, that's not possible. We bought this condo from a development company called Lakeshore Holdings, which is owned by Martinez Property Holdings, I said, pulling out another document. I purchased this building 6 months ago for $42 million. The penthouse you thought you were buying? It was going to be my wedding gift to you. But the sale that closed this morning? I looked directly at Madison. That was fraudulent. Madison's face had gone white. You're lying. This is some kind of sick joke. No joke, I said calmly. You see, Madison, you made a critical error. You assumed I was powerless. You assumed wrong. Richard Pierce stood up, blustering. Now see here, this is obviously some kind of misunderstanding. Sit down, Mr. Pierce. Or should I call you by your real name, Richard Pritchard? Father of Madeline Pritchard, also known as Madison Pierce? You've been helping your daughter run cons across the country for 6 years. Frank Chin stepped into the apartment. I'd given him a key earlier. He was carrying a thick folder of surveillance photos. Chicago PD is very interested in talking to you both, he said. And to Brett Carmichael, who's currently in custody. Derek's voice was barely a whisper. What's happening? I turned to my son, and my heart broke at the confusion and pain in his eyes. Sit down, Derek. It's time you learned the truth. About Madison, and about me. Derek collapsed onto the sofa, his face ashen. Someone explain to me what's happening. Right now. I took a deep breath and began laying out documents on the coffee table like cards in a deadly game. Madison, or Madeline Pritchard, her real name, is a professional con artist. She's done this twice before. A dentist in Phoenix, a developer in Denver. She marries successful men, steals their money, and disappears with her boyfriend Brett Carmichael. That's insane, Derek whispered, but his eyes were fixed on the surveillance photos Frank was arranging, images of Madison meeting Brett at coffee shops, restaurants, hotels. Madison lunged forward, trying to grab the photos. Those are fake. Photoshopped. This is harassment. The photos are time-stamped and geotagged, Frank said calmly. We also have bank records showing you've stolen $127,000 from Derek's firm accounts over the past 6 months. Wire transfers to offshore accounts. Fake vendor invoices. You've been systematically draining him dry. I pulled out the torn email I'd found in the trash, now reconstructed and laminated. I found this when I was cleaning your closet last week. You were sloppy, Madison. You thought the cleaning lady wouldn't notice. Derek took the email with shaking hands and read it. I watched the color drain from his face, watched his jaw clench, watched the moment his heart broke. When he looked up at Madison, there was something new in his eyes, not love, not even anger. Just emptiness. You were going to take everything, he said flatly. Marry me and disappear. Madison's mask finally cracked. The sweet, demure facade shattered, revealing the cold predator underneath. You were so easy, she spat. So desperate to prove you weren't just some Mexican kid from the ghetto. I dangled the promise of a better life, a better class of people, and you practically begged me to take everything. Get out, Derek said quietly. This condo is half mine. We closed this morning. I shook my head. Actually, no. The closing this morning was voided at 2 p.m. when my attorneys presented evidence of fraud to the title company. You never owned any part of this property. And you never will. Richard Pierce stood up, pointing a finger at me. We'll sue. We'll take everything you have. With what money? Frank asked pleasantly. The offshore accounts were frozen 2 hours ago. The FBI is very interested in your wire fraud case. Interstate commerce, multiple victims, that's federal. You're looking at 20 years minimum. Barbara Pierce, who'd been silent until now, suddenly grabbed her purse. We're leaving. Madison, come on. Don't bother, Frank said, stepping to the door. There are 2 Chicago PD detectives in the lobby waiting for you. I'd suggest you lawyer up. Madison turned to Derek one last time, and for just a moment, I saw something that might have been genuine emotion flicker across her face. Regret? Shame? Or just annoyance at being caught? For what it's worth, she said, you weren't the worst one. You actually made me almost feel bad about it. Almost. Then she was gone, flanked by Frank, her parents shuffling behind her like condemned prisoners. The door closed. Derek and I were alone. Chapter 10, The Distance Between Us. The silence stretched between us like a canyon. Derek sat on the sofa, still holding that reconstructed email, staring at nothing. I wanted to go to him, to hold him like I did when he was a child and the world hurt him. But I didn't know if I still had that right. How long? Derek finally asked. His voice was hollow. How long have you been rich? I sat down across from him, maintaining that careful distance. I started Martinez cleaning services when you were 8. By the time you were in high school, I had government contracts and was clearing 7 figures annually. When you graduated college, I was worth about 30 million. Today, around 85 million. He laughed, but it was an ugly sound. 85 million. And you let me think you were struggling. You let me be embarrassed of you. I never wanted you to be embarrassed. But I was. Derek shouted, and the pain in his voice cut through me like broken glass. Do you know how many times I made excuses for you? How many times I told people my mom was just a cleaning supervisor, like it was something to be ashamed of? Madison wasn't wrong about one thing. I was desperate to prove I was better than where I came from. And the whole time, you were secretly a millionaire, letting me think I'd somehow elevated myself above you. I wanted you to understand the value of work. By lying to me? By making me think you were poor while you drove a Mercedes you kept hidden? By letting me patronize you? He stood up, pacing. That dinner where Madison insulted you, where she asked if you'd saved for retirement, you could have destroyed her right there. You could have told the truth. Instead, you let her humiliate you. You let me watch it happen and do nothing. Each word was an arrow finding its mark. I wanted to see who you'd become, I said quietly. I wanted to know if I'd raised a man who valued character over cash. And Derek. I found out I hadn't. He flinched as if I'd slapped him. You were embarrassed by the woman who sacrificed everything for you, I continued, my voice steady despite the tears building behind my eyes. You let Madison treat me like garbage. You talked about moving to Seattle without telling me. You chose a beautiful lie over an ugly truth because it fit better with the image you wanted to project. So this was what, a test? Some elaborate scheme to teach me a lesson? No. This was me trying to protect my son from a predator. The fact that it also revealed who you'd become? That was just a consequence. Derek sank back onto the sofa, his head in his hands. I don't even know who you are. I'm your mother. I've always been your mother. I'm just also someone who built an empire from nothing, who owns buildings and employs hundreds of people, who happens to still remember what it's like to be invisible. So what happens now? His voice was muffled by his hands. You've saved me from Madison. You've shown me I'm a terrible son. What's the next part of your plan? I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the Chicago skyline, a city I'd conquered while people like Madison thought I was just hired help. The $127,000 Madison stole from your firm? I've already replaced it. As far as Hartman and Associates knows, it was an accounting error that's been corrected. Your partnership is secure. I don't want your money. Too bad. It's done. The condo? It's yours, free and clear. The deed will be transferred to your name only. Consider it a wedding gift, even though there won't be a wedding. I can't accept. You can and you will, I said firmly, turning to face him. Because you're going to need it while you figure out who you really want to be. But Derek? There's a condition. He looked up at me, his eyes red. What? You're going to work for me. Starting Monday, you're going to come to Martinez Enterprises and you're going to work your way up from the bottom. You'll shadow our cleaning crews. You'll learn what it means to be invisible, to be dismissed, to be treated like you don't matter. And maybe, just maybe, you'll remember where you came from and who sacrificed everything to get you where you are. And if I refuse? I picked up my briefcase. Then you refuse. I won't force you, Derek. But I also won't stand by and watch you become the kind of man who values appearances over substance. The choice is yours. It's always been yours. I walked to the door, then paused with my hand on the handle. I love you, Mijo. I always have. But love doesn't mean enabling you to be less than you could be. Think about it. Chapter 11, The Aftermath. I didn't hear from Derek for 3 days. Those were the longest 3 days of my life. I threw myself into work, signing contracts, attending meetings, making decisions that affected hundreds of employees. But every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped, hoping it was him. On the 4th day, Patricia knocked on my office door. Mrs. Martinez? Derek is here to see you. My heart stopped. Send him in. Derek walked into my office like he was seeing it for the first time, which, in a way, he was. He stared at the panoramic windows, the modern furniture, the framed photos of buildings I owned. His eyes lingered on one photo in particular, a small frame on my desk showing him at his college graduation, cap and gown, smiling proudly. I've been thinking, he said without preamble. About who I've become. About Madison, about you, about everything. And? You were right. About all of it. I was embarrassed. I was shallow. I valued the wrong things. He took a deep breath. I don't know if I can ever make up for that. But I'd like to try. So, when do I start? I felt tears prick my eyes but refused to let them fall. Not yet. Monday morning. 6 a.m. Wear clothes you don't mind getting dirty. Yes, ma'am. He hesitated, then crossed the room and pulled me into a hug. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. And then I let the tears fall. Monday morning, 5:45 a.m. I stood in the employee break room of Martinez Enterprises, watching the cleaning crews clock in for their shifts. These were my people, immigrants, single mothers, former felons trying to rebuild their lives. People society deemed invisible. At 5:58 a.m., Derek walked through the door. He wore old jeans and a plain t-shirt. His hair wasn't styled. He carried a lunch bag, something I hadn't seen him do since high school. When he saw me, he straightened his shoulders, trying to look confident. but I could see the nervousness in his eyes. "Good morning," I said professionally. "Everyone, this is Derek Martinez. He'll be training with us for the next 3 months. Derek, this is your supervisor, Maria Gonzalez." Maria was a woman in her 40s, tough as nails, who'd worked her way up from cleaning toilets to managing 50 employees. She looked Derek up and down with the critical eye of someone who'd seen plenty of rich kids trying to play poor. "Can you take orders?" Maria asked bluntly. "Yes, ma'am," Derek said. "Can you work without complaining?" "I'll do my best." "Your best isn't good enough. Either you can or you can't." Maria crossed her arms. "I don't care who your mother is. On my crew, everybody works. Everybody respects the job. You got a problem with that?" Derek glanced at me, then back at Maria. "No, ma'am. No problem." "Good. Grab a cart. We're doing the Hancock building today. 43 floors, and we start at the bottom." I watched them leave, Derek pushing a janitor's cart that probably weighed more than he expected. Maria was already barking instructions about proper mopping technique. He looked back once, and I gave him a small nod. This was going to be harder than he imagined. Good. Chapter 13, Learning Humility. The first week nearly broke him. Derek came home each night with aching muscles and blistered hands. He learned what it meant to scrub urinals in executive bathrooms, to clean up coffee spills from people who didn't bother to say thank you, to be talked over and walked past as if he didn't exist. On day 3, I got a call from Maria. "He's struggling," she said. "Not with the work, he's actually pretty good at that. But he keeps trying to explain to people that he's an architect, that this is temporary. Like he needs them to know he's better than this. What do you think I should do?" Maria laughed. "Nothing. Let him figure it out. Or let him quit. Either way, he'll learn something." Derek didn't quit. By the end of week 2, something shifted. I saw it when I made an unannounced visit to the Wells Fargo building where his crew was working. Derek was on his knees, cleaning baseboards in a conference room, while 2 executives stood nearby discussing a merger, completely ignoring his presence. But Derek wasn't bothered. He was listening, actually listening, to their conversation. And I realized he was learning what I'd learned 30 years ago: invisible people see everything. After the executives left, Derek looked up and saw me in the doorway. "Hey, Mom," he said, wiping his forehead with his arm. His hands were rough now, calloused. He looked tired but somehow more real than I'd seen him in years. "How's it going?" I asked. "It's hard," he admitted. "But I get it now. What you were trying to teach me." He gestured around the gleaming conference room. "I designed spaces like this. Beautiful, expensive spaces. But I never thought about the people who maintain them. The invisible workforce that makes everything function. They're not invisible because they're unimportant. They're invisible because people like me choose not to see them." I felt my throat tighten with emotion. "And now? Now I see them. And I see you, really see you, for the first time." He stood up, meeting my eyes. "You built something incredible, Mom. Not just a company, but an opportunity for people who desperately need one. And you did it while raising me, while sacrificing everything, while I was too blind and stupid to appreciate it." "Derek, let me finish." He took a deep breath. "I spent years being ashamed of where I came from. Ashamed of you. And all along, I should have been proud. You're the strongest, smartest, most resilient person I know. Madison saw a cleaning lady. I saw a burden. But you're neither of those things. You're extraordinary. I pulled him into a hug, not caring that we were both in a corporate building, not caring about professional boundaries. For the first time in years, I had my son back. Chapter 14, 6 months later. The transformation didn't happen overnight. Derek spent 3 months working with the cleaning crews, then 3 months learning about operations, contracts, HR, and finance. He asked questions. He took notes. He treated every employee with respect, remembering their names, asking about their families. And somewhere along the way, something beautiful happened. Derek found his purpose. "Mom," he said one morning, walking into my office with blueprints spread across his arms. "I have an idea. What if we created affordable housing units specifically for our employees? I've been designing something, modular construction, energy efficient, beautiful but practical. We could build on that empty lot in Pilsen that you own." I looked at the drawings. They were stunning, thoughtful design that honored both function and dignity. This would cost millions. I know. But think about the return on investment. Stable housing means stable employees. Lower turnover, higher morale, stronger community. It's not just charity, it's good business. I smiled. Okay. Let's do it. That project became the first of many. Derek stayed on at Martinez Enterprises, not as my son playing at work, but as a genuine partner in building something meaningful. He never went back to Hartman and Associates. He'd found something more valuable than prestige, he'd found purpose. Chapter 15, The Last Clean. Madison Pierce was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. Her boyfriend Brett got 20. Her parents took plea deals and served 3 years each. The story made headlines, Society con artist caught by cleaning lady CEO. I gave exactly one interview, to the Chicago Tribune, where I said simply, never underestimate the people you think are invisible. We see everything. The phone calls started after that, other women Madison had victimized, other families destroyed by similar scams. I used my resources to help where I could, funding legal aid, connecting victims with investigators. The invisible woman was making noise now. 1 year after that terrible dinner in the Lakefront Towers penthouse, Derek and I stood together at the grand opening of Martinez Housing Community, 48 beautiful, affordable units in Pilsen. Our employees who'd struggled with housing now had safe, dignified homes. Children played in a new courtyard Derek had designed. The mayor gave a speech about innovative public-private partnerships. But the moment I treasured most was when Maria Gonzalez, Derek's former supervisor, hugged us both and said, "You did good. Both of you." That evening, Derek and I sat in my office, our office now, looking out at the Chicago skyline as the sun set. "Do you ever regret it?" Derek asked. "Not telling me sooner? Letting me make all those mistakes?" I thought about it carefully. Sometimes. But Derek, if I'd just given you everything, would you have learned anything? Would you have become who you are now? Probably not, he admitted. I'd probably still be that shallow guy who cared more about appearances than substance. The guy who would have married Madison and lost everything. You didn't lose everything. You lost the wrong things. And you gained something much more valuable. What's that? Yourself. We sat in comfortable silence, and I thought about the journey that brought us here. From that first night 32 years ago when Miguel left, to scrubbing floors in Lincoln Park, to building an empire one contract at a time, to watching my son fall and helping him rise again. People still underestimate cleaning ladies. They still treat us as invisible, as insignificant. They leave their secrets lying around, thinking we don't matter enough to notice or care. They're wrong. We're the ones who see everything. We're the ones who hold the keys to the buildings you work in, the offices where you scheme, the homes where you reveal your true selves. We're the backbone of every gleaming tower and spotless hallway. And sometimes, we're the ones who own it all. My name is Gloria Martinez. I'm 59 years old. My hands still smell like cleaning solution, and my knees still ache on cold mornings. But when I look at my son, truly look at him, I see a good man who learned that real success isn't measured in status or appearances, but in character and compassion. Madison Pierce thought she was conning a poor cleaning lady's son. She never imagined that the woman on her knees scrubbing floors was the same woman who held the power to destroy her. That's the thing about being invisible. People never see you coming. And by the time they realize their mistake, it's too late. The cleaning's already done.